Hi my friends, it's Miss Kate and today we are going to be making homemade Play-Doh. This is a great sensory activity and science experiment, so let's get started. In order to make homemade Play-Doh, we need to add 1 cup of flour, which I have pre-measured in this bowl, 1 cup of salt, 1 tablespoon of cooking oil, 1 cup of boiling water, and optionally you can add 2 tablespoons of cream of tartar in order to make the Play-Doh more elastic and stretchy. I don't have cream of tartar, so we're just going to use the ingredients you see on the table right now. But you can also add things like Kool-Aid or food coloring in order to change the color of the Play-Doh. And right here I have purple food coloring. And also you can add things like peppermint oil or lemon in order to make the Play-Doh smell nice. So I'm going to start by adding 1 cup of flour. But before I do that, I want to ask my friends, is flour dry or wet? That's right, my friends, flour is dry. You can feel it between your fingers and it's nice and dry. But what is going to happen to the flour if I add it to 1 cup of boiling water? Is it still going to be dry or is it going to be wet? Why don't we find out together? Now we have to be very careful adding our flour to the water because we do not want to burn our hands. So we're going to use a spatula for mixing. And I'm going to put the flour into the water. And when I do that, I notice that the flour seems to float on top. I will show you my bowl so that you can see. The flour is just right on top of the water, so I really need to mix it in there in order to combine the two. So don't be afraid to mix with your spatula. And notice while you're mixing what is happening. The flour is added to the water and it is now becoming watery because of the boiling water. Let's see what happens when we add other ingredients. Before I mix too much, I'm going to add 1 cup of salt, and I'm just going to pour it right on in, and it also sits right on top until we mix it in. We also need 1 tablespoon of cooking oil, so I'm going to add that now. So I'm going to measure it with my tablespoon and add it right in. Now my friends, before I put it in, what do you think is going to happen to the water and the oil when we put it together? Let's see. When I put the oil on top, I notice that what happens to the oil? It stays right on top. Instead of sinking in the way water would, it stays separated from everything else it's touching. Now another way to see this is if you added the oil right after the water, you would see that the water and the oil separate instead of mixes. And so now with all of these ingredients, I'm going to stir, stir, stir with my spatula because the boiling water is very hot. And we're going to try to mix it all together. Now at some point, you might want to add in your food coloring or Kool-Aid and the lemon or peppermint oil or whatever else you might find to color your Play-Doh and make it smell nice. So I'm actually going to add a few drops of my purple food coloring. And we're going to see, I did 3 drops. We're just going to see if that's enough. I'm going to keep on mixing, keep on mixing. And I see what's happening to the color. As I mix it, it's spreading, but I want to show you something. I'm going to add 1 more drop of food coloring. I added the food coloring right here, right there. Is that drop light or dark purple? That's right, my friends, it is dark purple, but let's watch and see what happens when I mix it together. So I'm going to show you. I'm mixing it in, and what's happening to the color? Is it getting darker or lighter? The color is getting lighter because I am mixing it in with the white ingredients, and white is a light color, and so when you mix purple and white together, it makes a lighter purple color. And so you're going to notice when you make your very own Play-Doh how the color changes when you mix it with other ingredients, and you're going to notice that all of the ingredients mix together to make a kind of solid, firm Play-Doh. Okay, my friends, so something that I noticed while I was mixing is that the Play-Doh is not solid enough, so I'm going to add a little bit more flour. And you might have to do this too. There are lots of different recipes for Play-Doh that you can find on Pinterest or if you Google it, and there are many, many, many different recipes. So the one that I found, I noticed it's just a little liquidy, so I added some more flour. I just eyeballed it, and we're going to see what happens. So I'm going to move the flour over here so I can show you my bowl. And this is what it looks like when I add the flour. It's definitely becoming more solid, and as I mix it in, the Play-Doh is becoming less liquidy. Because when you mix the solid and the liquid together, look what happens. Depending on how much liquid you add and how much solid you add, it changes the consistency. And consistency is the way the material looks and feels. So this is the way the Play-Doh looks, and it would feel kind of goopy right now. So we need a little bit more flour, because eventually you want to get to the point where you can put it right onto your cutting board or surface that you don't mind getting dirty in order to knead it with your hands. And that is when you're going to be able to feel the texture. The water will be nice and cool by that point, and you won't need the spatula anymore, and you'll be able to mix it all together yourself. All right, my friends, so I'm going to actually put my Play-Doh right on the cutting board so that I can start to really mix it with my hands. So just make sure you get all of it out of the bowl. And then we're going to work with the consistency, which is how the Play-Doh feels and how thick or liquidy it is. We're going to play with the consistency until we find something that feels like Play-Doh, because homemade Play-Doh, you kind of have to play with it and fix the recipe a little bit to figure out how to best make the Play-Doh. So now that we have all of our Play-Doh on here, I'm just going to get rid of some bowls. And I'm actually going to sprinkle some more flour. You can actually put the flour on the board before you dump it out so that it doesn't stick, but we're going to see what happens. And let's keep mixing. Let's fix this. Let's keep mixing. So I'm about to put my hands in, and the consistency is still very sticky. Now, is this what happens when you play with Play-Doh? No, it needs to have a little bit more flour in it so it's less sticky. So I'm going to start mixing that flour in. And we're going to see how this works. But I might need to put even more flour in because this is very, very sticky. So the goal now is to keep adding little bits of flour at a time until we get the consistency you want. So I'm going to keep mixing some flour in with the rest of my ingredients until the Play-Doh is a little less goopy and a little less sticky, and I will see you in a little bit. Okay, my friends, so as you can see, I added a lot more flour and I'm still mixing it in, but it is starting to feel more like how Play-Doh should feel. And so for parents, it might be smart to add a little bit more flour to the recipe originally. So instead of 1 cup flour, you might want to start with 2. But the fun part of the science experiment is to notice the different textures and how the Play-Doh goes from liquidy to sticky to very solid and easy to play with. And so it might be nice to just keep the recipe the original way, the way you see it on the whiteboard, in order to allow for you as a family to explore all of the textures of the Play-Doh. So my friends, I want you to be talking about how the Play-Doh feels in your hands. Does it feel sticky or goopy? Does it feel slimy or hard or soft? Use all of the describing words you can think of to describe how the Play-Doh feels on your hands. And then, my friends, you will have Play-Doh that you can play with every single day at home. Okay, my friends, so my Play-Doh is all done. I have it in a nice ball right here. And you can add a little bit more food coloring if you'd like it to be a deeper purple. You can add glitter if you want to have some more textures in your Play-Doh, all sorts of things. But what I'm going to do now is put this in a baggie so that it stays nice and fresh every time that I would like to use my Play-Doh. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.